And speaking of the run game, I want to pose this question because I saw a stat from Eric Eager. The Vikings have run 21 personnel exactly 3 plays in the preseason. Three plays with 2 running backs on the field, a.k.a. a fullback. So, Arif, is C.J. Ham becoming a wasted roster spot?
I'm glad you asked it like that and not whether or not C.J. Ham is at risk of losing his job, because the way they've talked him up off season, no way would they cut him. Just to save face, even. Like, it would be so ridiculous for them to cut him and then for us to go into the facility. It's like, hey, you said all these great things about C.J. Ham and then you cut him. That's kind of screwed up, isn't it? No, he's definitely going to be on the roster. Is he a wasted roster spot? I don't think necessarily that's the case. And the reason for that is because I think the things that they want to do with CJ Ham are the kinds of things that they don't want to reveal in the preseason. I think that they want to deploy CJ Ham in ways that are strategic to them because they think that he could do everything. They think that he could be a Kyle Juszczyk, right? And if he could be a Kyle Juszczyk, you do not, reveal your hand early in the preseason. Now, remember, the Vikings starters have rested, a lot. They've played like 9 total snaps in the preseason so far. They consider CJ Ham to be a starter, right? And if that's the case, then no, you're not going to get a bunch of 21 personnel. What are we going to learn by putting Jake Bargas? Well, I guess Jake Bargas isn't even on the team, right? Like, what are you gonna learn by putting a fullback on the field, right? So I think that the way that you think of a fullback and the way the Vikings want to think about CJ Ham, those are completely different things. And I think that they want to be creative, have him run wheel routes, have him run choice routes, have him motion in and out, have him play wing, have him play, right up in the nub. Like, there's so many different ways that you could use somebody that they project CJ Ham to be. I don't know if they're right. I think that they're being really optimistic, but so many ways that they project you can use CJ Ham that I think that the preseason deployment doesn't tell us much.
When you decide whether or not you're going to use a fullback, you're not doing that before you know who the fullback is. Like, that's not a decision. You're like, I'm going to be a fullback offense this year. Who are our... No, if you have a fullback, be a fullback team. If you don't have a fullback, don't be a fullback team. And the difference between, this is probably the key difference between like the McVay version and the Shanahan version is that Shanahan has Juszczyk and uses him. And there are Shanahan concepts that have kind of leaked into this. This is not just a copy paste McVay playbook. There are San Francisco concepts in this playbook that we've seen already. They've spent entire days drilling like lead concepts with a fullback in them in camp. So no, I'm with Arif. I think that there's going to be more of this in the season, but even without that, even without lead concepts where you have CJ Ham as a lead blocker, the real difference between like a run play where you have a lead fullback and a run play without one is that a tight end does that job anyways. CJ Ham might be the second best tight end on the roster right now. Like,
You're not wrong.
That tight end depth is such a problem that putting the fullback in is like genuinely maybe we should do this if Irv Smith isn't healthy. Maybe CJ Ham gets tight end reps. Yeah, that guy should probably be on your 53 and available to you. So I wouldn't call it a wasted roster spot. I think they're going to use him more than we think. Probably wouldn't go with preseason starter snap counts by this logic. So Justin Jefferson's a wasted roster spot too.
Yeah, Inman, let me tee you up in a second here, Luke, because I think that they're both right. Things that were told to me prior to training camp were that Kevin O'Connell actually believes the LA Rams used 11 too much. They were number 1 in 11 personnel usage last year. He actually thinks there are mismatches to be exposed if they go a little heavier. Now, I know the roster construction with the lack of tight end depth doesn't really lend itself to that, except for CJ Ham, who can play a little bit of that tight end role. I think you guys really hit the nail on the head. And based on what we know about the team's paranoia and their desire not to play anyone in the preseason, they're clearly trying to 4D chess this thing to unveil the Ham package against the Packers in week 1. So, Luke, Inman, what I would pose to you is, let's assume that we're right. Let's assume that CJ Ham is a big part of this offense. Is the team right in doing that when that probably means they're taking KJ Osborne or another receiver off the field?
Well, it's a good question. I think when you can have such a stark contrast in your offense to spread out a defense on one play with 4 or 5 wide and come back the next play on 2nd and 2 with a heavy personnel fullback, it just really tests and stretches out a defensive capabilities, communication skills, things like that. So I absolutely don't think he's a wasted spot. I'm with both you guys, and I expect him to be on the field and make an impact. I think more than people think, given the opportunity or the opponent they're playing, week-to-week game plans, what KOC draws up in that offensive room. And like Arif mentioned, I don't think they've shown any of that in the preseason thus far on purpose. But even at training camp practice, maybe not in the preseason games, but at training camp practice, for me, the 1 or 2 days that I was out there, I saw Ham out there quite a bit. I was actually a little surprised just because I had heard so little about him. So I certainly think that KOC wants to run the ball pretty effectively. And I'm glad Arif mentioned Kyle Juszczyk. Not just use him as a lead blocker, but utilize his pass catching skills as well. Probably not at tight end like we joked about, even though, let's be serious, maybe he would be a good tight end given our lack of depth right now. But in different roles, the wheel routes, things like that, I think would be a great way to maximize CJ Ham's skill set for sure.